Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Alex Robertson, and this week we're doing a solo podcast where I am going to be focusing on the three things that I think are critical to living a happy, successful, and healthy life. This is the advice that I wish I'd got when I was a teenager, and it is certainly something that you're not going to learn through the school education system. So, without further ado, let's get into the three things that are critical for living a successful, happy, and healthy life. In my view, the three most important elements we as human beings have to work on are money, mindset, and love. And I'm going to go into each one of these topics in a lot of detail to discuss some of the key things that you need to be thinking about when you are constructing your life. And the sooner you start this, the younger you start this, the more success you can achieve in your life. You might think immediately that there's other things you would have expected to be on that list. And I think as I go into a bit more detail in these areas, it will become much clearer as to why these are the three things that I'm saying people need to focus on in life. You need to get these things right to put you on a path towards a successful life. So let's start with money. No surprise that I'm going to be talking about this subject throughout the entirety of the Real Wealth Podcast. Money has been a big focus, creating generational wealth and all the different strategies you can employ to create money, to create wealth. So it's no doubt an important subject for anybody. They say money doesn't bring happiness, but a lack of money can bring a great amount of unhappiness and stress in your life. So it is important that you learn the fundamentals of how to manage money. And I would argue that the age that we live in now, it's more important than ever to understand money. We're living in an age where we have the dawn of artificial intelligence. You know, I've spoke about this on previous podcasts. We are heading towards artificial general intelligence, which is when the game changes, when we talk about general intelligence rather than these artificial intelligent platforms just now that are just very focused on one area, like creating images or creating content. We are talking about artificial intelligence moving forward now at a speed that is unparalleled. We spoke about in previous podcasts that, for instance, ChatGPT 3.5, which is the old version of ChatGPT, had an IQ of 155, which is broadly in line with where Einstein's IQ is. So when we've got artificial intelligence tools that is already as smart as one of the smartest humans that we've produced, you can see how that's going to extrapolate out as we go forward. We could be months away from ChatGPT 5, which could completely change the game. And you've got guys like Mo Gawdat who have been at the precipice of this technology who say, in the not too distant future, artificial intelligence could be multiples of our intelligence, even as much in the end as 1 billion times more intelligent than the human race. So if that's where we're going and we're heading towards a singularity, which is the fact that we don't know what happens after that point, when artificial general intelligence becomes exponentially more intelligent than us, we don't know what happens on the other side of that. That is, by definition, a singularity. You can't assume from what we know now and the way that life is that it's going to be the same afterwards. And some of the major talking points just now are displacement of jobs in the future. So, we grew up in an era where you were taught to get a job, you were taught to go through the higher education system. If your parents had come from a background like mine, who were never in a position to go to university, that was really important to them that you did. A lot of people set on that course and then get a good job, work your way up through the ranks in the job and try and make as much money as you can in your life to provide security for your family in the long term. That is the premise of how most people are designed. That is the premise of how the system brings us up as teenagers, as young adults, to progress into society. That may not be the right path for a lot of kids coming through the system right now. We don't know what's going to be on the other side of artificial intelligence, and at the very least we are looking at unprecedented levels of job displacement. We're already starting to see it. If you look at companies like Amazon, there's been tens of thousands of jobs already removed due to the advent of artificial intelligence within their system. They are launching robots that can manage stock in the warehouses. They are launching drones that can deliver things. They're looking at driverless vehicles. There are a lot of things coming just now that are going to lead to mass jobs, and Amazon is one of the biggest private employers in the world. So we're already seeing the impacts of that. We've seen McDonald's do a fully automated restaurant where there is no staff whatsoever. Everything is provided through automation and artificial intelligence. It's not hard to see where it's going. We could be looking at a situation in the not too distant future where jobs like customer sales reps, car and truck drivers, computer programmers, copywriters, paralegals, research workers, factory workers, those types of jobs become completely obsolete because we have artificial intelligence that can do it better. And that's only the start. That's the low-hanging fruit in terms of the research and review of what jobs could be taken in the short term by artificial intelligence. So really I say all of this to give you an understanding that the world is going to change in the not too distant future. In my view, that means it's more critical than ever now that people are starting to become educated on money and how to create wealth, because what happens when the job market drastically changes in the future? What happens at that point when there is mass unemployment in the economy? Well, what's likely to happen, and certainly a lot of the dystopian views of the world going forward, is that the government step in and they start to pay everybody in a very controlled fashion. And if you combine that sort of mentality with central digital currency, which is another inevitable, it's something that's coming at us, the elimination of physical money and everything going digital, you could end up in a situation in the not too distant future where the government is not only paying you, but they are also controlling how your money is spent. They could take taxes at source, straight from your bank account. They could restrict you from spending in certain areas. And this is already happening in China. There's examples in China where, if you are caught jaywalking, that is immediately going to be made publicly available, posted. You're seen as someone who has jaywalked. Over a period of time, your social credit starts to reduce, which affects your ability to spend money and earn money. And in the long term, the government can start to restrict what you spend your money on. They might say, okay, well, you've had too much entertainment this month, so we're not going to allow you to spend any more on going out to eat or going out to shows or anything like that. It could become a situation where your financial well-being is entirely controlled by the government. Now, I'm not saying all this to scaremonger. The point I'm making really is that the world is changing rapidly in a way that we've never seen before. So for me, understanding money and how to create wealth, money gives you options. The more money you can build, the more wealth you can create, the more options you have available to you. Learning the key fundamentals of how to build wealth is a critical skill that I feel like everybody has to have. We don't want, and certainly I don't want for my children to be taken down a route that the system dictates of going through the education system, going to university, trying to get a job, working for someone else, having no control over their own financial well-being. I've talked a lot through the podcast about, as an employee, there's very little you can do about tax. There's very little you can do because the government's going to take it before you even get your money. It's only entrepreneurship that opens up all the opportunities for you to be able to then take control, manage your affairs in a tax efficient way, and the more flexibility you have with that, the more wealth you can create. Given that one of the biggest costs you're ever going to have in your life, and most people think it's their house, it is not. It's the tax. It's your government. That's the biggest thing you're paying. For a lot of high tax earners, they're paying up to 70 pence in the pound back to the government in taxes through income tax, through national insurance, through VAT, on all the goods that you buy, on the duties that you buy, on the stamp duties and transaction taxes associated with buying a house, on the council tax, on the road tax. You know, when you stack all these different taxes up, huge amount of your income is going back to the government. So, you know, really understand that money and entrepreneurship and how to build your own business is a foundational element to being able to control your own wealth and grow it in the long term. And really, for the younger generation, there's only a few important lessons they need to learn, which is, as you start to earn money, spend less than you make. Now, Robert Kiyosaki talks about it as pay yourself first. The principle being that if you've got a sum that you put aside for yourself to grow your savings and investment pot, then that money becomes absolutely critical to you, and you're only left with the rest to spend on things to grow your other expenses. And what too many people do is they look at the amount of money they get every month and they say, okay, well, how can I get as much as possible out of that money? And they're spending it in the wrong areas. They're looking at liabilities. They want a bigger house. They want a nicer car. They're trying to keep up with everybody else, rather than saying, how can I save as much money as possible so I can then invest it, grow my asset column, and with those assets, I'm going to create more income to then be able to spend on the things that I want. So many people don't get that fundamental element of it. Kids aren't taught it. The school system doesn't teach it. Unless you go out there and try to learn the fundamentals of wealth in books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like The Richest Man in Babylon, like there are so many to mention, but so many people don't get that initial education, and as a result, you know, it can lead you down the path that effectively, you know, you are living for each individual paycheck, and if you don't maintain an employee position, then you're just not going to be able to meet your monthly obligations. As the kids come along and the liabilities grow, you are more and more tied to that desk, you're tied to that job, you have less flexibility, you don't have the time and resource available to pursue your goals and ambitions in life. So, you know, there are a lot more I can talk about on money, but I think it's clear, especially for anybody that's been listening to the podcast for a while, that wealth creation is incredibly important, and understanding the fundamentals of how money works is critical. So for me, this is one of the most important subjects just now, particularly where we're heading. You know, if there is mass job displacement through artificial intelligence, then we need to be able to create our own wealth, and we need to build our assets now for the generations. You know, I'm already thinking about what I'm passing down to my kids in terms of assets, so they have a level of security if things go the way we expect them to with the job market in the future. So that's the first topic. The second most important element that I want to cover is mindset, and I think a lot of people, when you mention mindset, they start to do a mental eye roll where they think, you know, this is so overdone. There's been so many self-help books over the last kind of 20 years where, you know, people think that this is just a bit woo-woo, it's a bit hippie, you know, whether you're talking about meditation, visualization, affirmation, these are just things that are totally overdone. But the reality is, and that's why so many self-improvement courses, regardless of what the subject is, they'll generally start with mindset. You know, that's where we've always started when we're working with our training clients, because the reality is, it is the hardest step to get over for anyone that you're trying to help achieve something in life. It is the understanding that the biggest issue in you trying to achieve what you want in life is you. It's the mindset that you have, it's the thought patterns that you have, it's the limiting beliefs that you have. If you can't get over that first hurdle, it's very hard to achieve anything in life. We have this with a lot of clients in their first year with us, where they're trying to build their property portfolio. The amount of clients that struggle in adversity, that go straight to blame, that don't look at okay, I've got a problem here. How can I solve it? As entrepreneurs, most of us are professional problem solvers. The prize for solving a problem is a bigger problem. As your business gets bigger, the problems get bigger. You have to adapt and be able to problem solve on a mass scale. That is the job of an entrepreneur ultimately. So it's incredibly important that you get over these first few mindset hurdles. And yes, there are a lot of different things out there that can help people improve their mindset, grow mental strength and resilience. But it all fundamentally stems from the initial understanding that you are not your brain. You know, our brains have not evolved in the last tens of thousands of years. You know, they were originally designed to keep us safe in the Serengeti when we had animals trying to hunt us down and kill us. They still operate in the same manner as they did back then, but the reality of today in modern life, the risks are not the same as they were back then, but our brains still operate in the same way. So it's really important that you understand that the thought patterns and the thoughts that are being thrown at you on a daily basis are not necessarily you. You have to be able to filter through them. You have to be able to control them. And, you know, everybody's had those days where they wake up in a negative mindset, and it's about how you react to that. But most people just act. They don't have any perspective. They don't wake up and say, I wonder why I'm in such a negative mind frame today. They just immediately go into their day, and they're just reactive to everything around them from this position of a negative mindset. And you can do more damage in that status than you can good in the day. So it's an understanding of yourself, what makes you tick. What are the things that create those scenarios? And a lot of the self-help books that I've read around mindset and control of mindset start from self-understanding. Start from understanding, who am I? What makes me tick? What are the issues? What did I do well yesterday? What were the challenges? When is my brain tripping me up? You know, when am I being taken down the path of believing a limiting belief? And if I have a limiting belief, I can't do that. I can't achieve that. That's not for me. Where did it come from? Why does it exist? And is it really true? That you have to go back to understanding the fundamentals of that. You know, our brain has evolved to keep us safe, but it doesn't always do a good job at that. It's not always acting in your overall holistic best interests. And, you know, I took till my 30s to start to realise that. And all through my 20s, I was just reacting based on how I felt in the day. And when I look back at it, it was such a reactive way to live. It's not until you understand and reflect. And there are a lot of brilliant tools out there to do that. You need to find what fits well with you. People talk about meditation being a good opportunity. And again, it's another thing that people think is a bit hippie, you know, meditation. But ultimately, all you're doing through the process of meditation is learning to control your thought patterns. A lot of meditations start with just understanding the thoughts that are coming up and not grabbing onto them, not judging them, not analysing them, just understanding the flow for that day. And all that exercise is getting you to do is to be more aware, be more self-aware of what's going on in your head. So it can be massively beneficial, and time meditation is something that generally doesn't work unless you really stick at it and do it on a regimented basis. It's not something that's really worked for me. Another one that people talk about a lot is visualization. Again, the concept that you can visualize something and it's going to happen, and you know, it just sounds a bit unrealistic to anybody that's never tried it. But the point of visualization is you create a strong picture of the future in your head that is desirable to you. You connect with the emotions of that, and then we get on to the really important part, which is what we call TFAR: thoughts, feelings, actions, results. So everything starts with a thought, and that thought creates a feeling, The feeling then creates actions, and it's those actions that create results. So if you've visualized something, you've thought something, and you've thought it in very clear terms, and it's a desirable thing you want in the future, then that is going to lead to some very strong feelings within you, which is then going to result in action taking. And the action taken leads to the results. So visualization is very much about driving you towards taking the actions you need to do in your life. So it's not as woo-woo as a lot of people think. It's something that, you know, I again, doesn't really connect with me that well, because I'm not very creative, I'm not very good at visualization. But for a lot of other people, that is a really powerful tool to help them control their mindset. For me, the important things are exercise, and that's why I don't have health on this list of 3, because I feel like if you look after your mind, that also requires you to look after your fitness and well-being, because if you don't have a healthy body, you can't have a healthy mind. So for me, it's all about early exercise. It's about learning, constantly trying to understand more about myself, about my head, about the world around me. And it's also about a feedback loop of understanding what I did yesterday, what worked, what didn't work, what am I trying to achieve today. Those are the sort of tools that I use in my day-to-day life. I've talked about it a lot, the 5 a.m. club and the 20-20-20 formula. That's what works for me. Everybody's got their own thing, but ultimately, if you are not working on your mind, if you're not creating some mental hardship, and that's where it really comes down to for me. You know, people live in their life looking for the easy, comfortable route. The more comfortable your life is in the short term, the harder it's going to be in the long term. And training your mindset, putting it through some mental difficulty. You know, look at guys like David Goggins and the sort of things that he's achieved, you know, through mental toughness, just telling himself he's not going to give up. You know, that is incredibly powerful, what you can achieve in life when you build a resilient mindset. But if you always opt for the comfortable, easy solutions, then unfortunately, you know, that is going to make life much more difficult in the long term. I'm always trying to think about, you know, what really difficult things do I need to deal with today? Because if I'm not dealing with the difficult things, then I'm not moving the business forward. That's generally the truth. You know, if you don't take the hard things on, full steam ahead, direct, deal with it then and there, you know, it leads to procrastination, and procrastination, it can kill your business in the long term. I've met so many entrepreneurs that know they've got a serious problem in their business, but they're just burying their head in the sand. They're not taking the action that they need to do to correct the situation. So again, that all comes back to mindset. So much failure in life you can attach to mindset, and failure isn't necessarily bad. It's learning and moving on from it. So that is a fair bit about mindset. The one thing I want to talk about more than anything on the subject of mindset is victimhood, because it's something that I see more and more throughout my personal life, throughout my business journey. There are a lot of people out there who are a victim of the world, and what I mean by that is they view everything happens to them. You know, they have no control over their external environment, and if something bad goes wrong, they have no agency, they have no responsibility. It happened to me, poor me. That is a huge proportion of people that I encounter in the world. I think it's one of the biggest things that we have a challenge with in the human race, is just a complete lack of personal agency and personal responsibility, which leads to a negative outlook. When you adopt the victim mindset, creates a negative outlook on life in general. You're not in control of anything. So you can feel powerless, pessimistic. You know, I would hate to live in a world where I felt like I had no control over everything that happened to me. The way that I look at it is, you know, I take complete responsibility for everything that happens in my life. Good or bad, I am entirely responsible for it. Even if it wasn't entirely within my control, I am taking full responsibility for that, because that's the only way I have any power. If you don't have power, then you have no ability to affect the outcome of life. You know, that to me is a terrifying place to be. And you know, I like him or loathe him, I always go to Andrew Tate because he's a very extreme example of this. You know, he says if it's raining outside, then that's my fault because I put myself here today. It was my decision to be in this place right now. I don't like the rain and it's raining outside. It's on me, no one else. And that is an extreme example of taking personal responsibility. But because of that personal responsibility, he feels like he can control anything. The entirety of his future is dependent on the actions that he takes. That is a very empowering thing. That is a very empowering mindset. So, you know, like Andrew Tate or not, there is a very strong message within that. You know, if you feel like a victim all the time, then you're unlikely to be looking at problem solving. You're unlikely to look at, you know, right, how can I fix this? Because, you know, you just go in a spiral of self-pity, avoidance tactics. You don't get into the guts of the problem and say, right, how can this be solved? And the reality is, in the long term, people aren't going to want to work with you. It strains relationships. It strains everything around you. So, you know, this is a pet peeve of mine. I cannot deal with anybody that feels like they are a victim of anything. Take personal responsibility, take action, and take control. So that was a bit about mindset. I do feel like, you know, it's talked about a lot, but it's talked about a lot for a reason. You know, it's critically important to the success in your life. If you can't get your mind right, then, you know, the first major hurdle you come up against, you're not going to be able to overcome it. And that for me is the crux of the issue. Okay, so that brings me on to the last point, and then maybe a bit surprising for people. You know, why am I talking about love? You know, we're a business podcast, we're a wealth podcast. We don't really go into these sort of subjects. But for me, it's an incredibly important part of it. You know, if you've got your finances right and you've managed your money and you've got a really healthy, solid mindset, but you don't have the skills to be able to find the right partner in life, you pick badly when you pick partners, or you don't understand the process, that can lead to a very, very unhappy life. The reality is, for most people, they start with this unrealistic list of things that they want from a partner. They must be this, they must be sporty, athletic, they must be 6 foot tall, they must be, you know, all these characteristics that you expect from someone. And more often than not, you're not worthy of those characteristics. You're not worthy because you don't display those types of characteristics. You want someone who is athletic, but you're not athletic. In reality, you know, if you get together with someone who's athletic and they're always exercising, they're always at the gym, and you're not there, then that is going to cause tension in the relationship going forward, and it's not going to work. The important point of all of that is you have to start from yourself. You know, you become the best version of yourself. You attract someone who is what you're looking for. And that's really the crux of it. And the reason I put an emphasis on this, and the reason why love is included within this podcast is, you know, from personal experience, if you do not pick the right partner in life, you can get everything else right, but you're still going to be very, very unhappy. You know, if you are going on a business journey and you have all the tools to succeed in life, but your partner is not aligned with you, they're not on board with it, you know, that is going to lead to a lot of friction in the long term. If you are a really positive mindset, if you've done all this work on yourself and your head is in the right place and your partner is very negative and has a victimhood mentality, then that is just going to drag you down. It's going to really make it hard for you to achieve anything, because you're constantly battling this negativity. It's another layer of challenge that you have. And, you know, in terms of your wealth, you know, if you marry the wrong person and go down it, speaking from personal experience, divorce is a horrendous situation to be in. You know, it can cause huge financial impact. It can get very expensive. It can get very nasty. And And you know, you can go through, as I have, you know, a really, really tough time trying to deal with that situation. You know, it can take a significant mental toll, and it can detract from everything else positive in your life that you're trying to achieve. The power of having the right person at your side through life is incredible. You know, when you look at a lot of people that have achieved great things in their life, look at Bill Gates. You know, he has a very close symbiotic relationship with Melinda Gates. They work hand in hand together on their charity ventures, and they both bring different things to the table. So they have similar values but very different skill sets, and that's hugely powerful in any partnership. We've talked about that at no end in this podcast in terms of having a joint venture partner where you want similar values but different skill sets, so you can each bring something to the table. It's no different in your love life. You want a partner that has different perspectives, different views. You're not the identical person, but equally you want some underlying values that gel together. You don't have to have all the same interests. You know, I'm not an expert on this subject by any means, and there's probably not much I can say on it other than I feel like it's something that you're never going to learn in school. Nobody's ever going to teach you how to pick the right partner. But it has to come from an understanding of self. If you haven't taken the time to understand yourself, to understand the things that make you tick, the things that are important, understand what your values are. It's so easy for people to go through life without really understanding themselves, just living day to day, living the motions. You've got a job, you need to go there every day, you come home, you've got obligations to do there. You know, you're not thinking about who you are, what your goals, ambitions, objectives are. If you don't start to understand those things, how can you possibly understand what you're looking for from someone else? You know, it's almost ridiculous to think that someone who's 18, 19 has the ability to pick a partner for the rest of their life, because you know, you are going to become multiple different people through your life and have multiple different interests. And if you don't find someone to come on that journey with you, then, you know, it's probably not going to work out. So, you know, it's an incredibly difficult, complex. There are more books written about love and romance and how to pick a partner than there are on money and wealth, because it's just a hugely complicated subject. But it is something that no one will teach you growing up. You just start dating, you just start meeting people, you just start trying stuff out. But if you're not getting to know yourself, if you're not building a fundamental picture of who you are and what you're looking for, then really are you going to be able to pick the right partner? No. And if you don't, you know, you either land lucky or you lead down the path of a very, very unhappy life. So, you know, I've been there. I've corrected path now. I'm lucky enough to have a relationship that is built on mutual values and respect of each other and supporting each other to achieve our goals. But that doesn't come for everybody, and I've had to go through a really rough time to be able to come out the other side of that and achieve it. But I knew where I was before, if I'd stayed in that situation, I was never going to be able to get to where I wanted to in life. You know, I started on a journey of understanding myself, my goals, my objectives, and I understood that in the relationship I was in previously, I was never going to get there. It was never going to help me achieve those things. It was never going to lead to a positive result. So it's more of a personal spin on it. And like I say, when it comes to that subject, I'm definitely not an expert, but I have had some experience recently, and I do summarize that 3 of the most important things you can do, and you can teach your children, the younger you learn this, the better, is understanding the skills of money and wealth creation, helping build a healthy mindset, and helping understand yourself so you can understand the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. So that's been my view on this subject. I'm Alex Robertson. This has been the Real Wealth Podcast, and thanks for joining us on this wealth journey.